Okay, so you decided you want to buy a CZ pistol and you've done your research on the CZ75 and then you look to go buy and you realize, holy shit, there are a million different models and variations of this gun. The names are not super intuitive. It sounds like they were named by Drunk Ivan at the factory in the Czech Republic and he was throwing them together and you have no idea what the hell is going on. The purpose of this video is to help you with that. What we're going to do is we're going to go through 4 models of these guns. This is by no means all of them. Break down the quick differences between each gun and just the need to know things that I wish I was told before I bought. It's going to be as short of a review as possible. No bullshit shooting videos, no stories. We're not doing that because honestly, there's some great YouTube reviewers out there, but those are unbearable and we fast forward through a lot of that anyway. So all these guns have been cleared. I'm not going to clear 4 guns on camera. You're going to have to trust me. On the left, what we have here is the 75 BD Police. What this is, I would for now just forget the word police, okay? This is just a 75 BD, okay? 75 BD, the D means decocker. If you look here, there's a decocker instead of a safety. So a 75 BD, I'm gonna black out police again, is just that, okay? It's a classic 75 with a decocker. Police is just a limited run of them that they did. It's got a fancy slide stamp. It has on the top a loaded chamber indicator. You can see that there. It's got a lanyard loop and it's got some different checkering in the front and back. But CZ does that. You'll find that they make these runs of guns with a unique stamp on the slide or a special color and they stop making them. It's a limited run. But all that is a 75 BD. Okay? Phenomenal gun, classic CZs, my first one. They're awesome, right? That's what got me into them. Now, next up, what you have is the CZ75 SP01 Tactical. Holy shit, that's a mouthful. Now, the SP01s are, I'm going to say it, they're improved over the 75. It's an improved line of steel-framed 75 pistols, okay? Why is it improved? For one, the frame is better, okay? What you'll see here is this very deep beaver tail, right? This like deep cut, whereas a lot of these 75s do not have that. There are some that do, and that's okay. But on the SP01, you have the deep beaver tail and the rail up front. And someone say, oh, I might not put a light on it. Why do I want that rail? This one looks more classic. The reason you want this is because that weight up front makes this gun better to shoot, especially quickly, like in competition. These are weighted better. There's no question that the weight up front, the balance of the gun is just better for staying on target and quickly firing shots, okay? It's better. It is a better shooter, okay? So, the SP01 Tactical, compared to the SP01 regular, just means it has a decocker. They don't call them SP01 BD like they do over here. It just has a decocker, right? So there's the SP01, which has a safety, and the SP01 Tactical, which has a decocker. Otherwise, it's the same gun, okay? Now, moving on down to this pretty one right here. This is my CZ75 SP01 Shadow. Shadow is an improved line of SP01s that come out of the factory upgraded. What does that mean? So CZ claims, and it's even hard to see this on camera, but it does feel different to me. I can't confirm or deny this, that the frame cuts are actually a little different. They're deeper. It's subtle, but they're deeper, according to CZ, which allows you to get your hand higher up on the gun, which is obviously better, right? Higher up on the gun, mitigates recoil, better shooter, easier to control. So that's the first difference, right? Different frame. Now, as far as, the bells and whistles, you get blacked out rear and a fiber optic front sight right out of the box. So if you're someone who might do that to your gun, a competition setup, consider this, okay? These all have safeties, not decockers. Now, the big difference between a Shadow, and the reason a lot of CZ guys will want the Shadow over the SP01, if you look at all these CZs, they have these tiny little roll pins right here on the slide. The Shadow does not. That roll pin is for the firing pin block. Shadow doesn't have one because it doesn't have a firing pin block. There is less mechanical complexity in this gun's trigger mechanisms. What does that mean? Way better trigger out of the box. No question. And if you want to upgrade your CZs down the road, as I do, as I have done to my SP01 Tactical, there's a Cajun Gunworks Pro kit in here. This thing's a monster, right? I love it. But if you want to upgrade your SP01 Shadow, not only is it easier to work on because there's no firing pin block and no lifter on the inside and things like that, but you have the potential for a way better trigger than any other CZ. This Shadow with a Cajun Gunworks Pro kit will have a better trigger than this SP01 Tactical with the Cajun Gunworks Pro Kit. Both will be phenomenal, right? But the mechanical simplicity of the Shadow and just the improvements in the factory mean you have the best potential for a hot rod trigger over time. So that's why a lot of people buy the Shadows. If I was doing it over again, I would have not bought the SP01 Tactical. I would have just saved a little bit more money and bought a Shadow. But that's just me. Don't get me wrong. This Shadow, this SP01 trigger with the Cajun kit is unreal. I absolutely love it. Run it in competitions many times. It's great. But now I prefer this one. Okay, so that is the Shadow, right? And there's a bunch of different Shadow variants, but this is like the basic Shadow. You can get upgraded Shadows from CZ Customs where they've worked on them even more, but this is the basic one. Now, on the right here, far right, what we have is the 75D Compact PCR. This is a PCR, okay? I say that because this gets very confusing in CZ land because there's a couple different compact models and they can pretty much, you can see a ton of them with that exact same slide stamp. So someone say, oh, it's a 75D compact, but that actually could mean many different things, okay? The PCR is an aluminum alloy framed decocker CZ. It's lightweight, it's designed for carry, it also has a loaded chamber indicator. PCR stands for Police Czech Republic. I have no idea if these are issued to police over there or not. That's just what they call it. Now, in comparison to the PCR, you have the P01, which is essentially the same gun. There's some slight differences, no loaded chamber indicator, things like that, but it's essentially the same with a rail. The rail allows you to put a light on it. So if you're on the fence between the two, the question is, are you ever going to put a light on it? If you're never going to put a light on it and you like to carry it inside the waistband like I do, I would get the PCR because this tapered front means less bulk in Kydex holsters, and that matters, right? It's a small difference, but it's definitely less bulky. And if you look, I mean, this gun is pretty slim as far as double stack pistols go. So it can be made quite slim, and you're carrying a gun, you still like you feel have a fighting pistol, though it's not a little single stack. Now, just for comparison, because I love comparisons, this is the PCR compared to a Glock 43. As you see here, okay, Glock 43 is a lot smaller. This is not a single stack tiny gun. You're not pocket carrying it. It's a gun, okay? You get a full grip. I mean, you could run this, if you're an IDPA shooter, you could run this in CCP if you wanted. You could run it in USPSA 2 production, I guess, but you'd be at disadvantage probably, unless you're just nasty with it. But, so it's not a little single stack. Now, to add to the confusion around compact CZs, to just go back to that real quick, you have the PCR, this gun, you have the P01 with a rail. The P01 can have a slide that says 75D on it. Right? So the only difference the only way you're going to tell them apart really is going to be the rail. Okay? So the P01 can have that. It can say P01 or 75D. If it has a rail and a decocker, it is a P01. Model number 3, there's the steel-framed P01 with a safety. This is often called the SP01 Compact. It is steel-framed, not alloy-framed like the P01 and the PCR. It's a unicorn gun. You're not going to find these in the wild that often, and if you do, it usually confuses people. They don't know what they're looking at. But it's a limited run. Only a few of them came over, and they're out there. It's just a heavier P01, basically, and instead of a decocker, you have the safety. Now, that is, like I said, SP01 Compact. Use the SKU number to tell them apart. That's how people usually refer to it. And so there's that. Now, the final one, which is actually the most basic of them, is the CZ75 Compact, 75C. It's the first CZ Compact that they made. It's basically, it looks a lot like a PCR. The slide is right under the slide where the nose of the frame is actually a little different between the Compact and the PCR. But really what you have here is a gun with a safety and a steel frame, different than the PCR, which is alloy framed and has a decocker. Okay. The 75 Compact is heavier than the 75D Compact PCR. Okay, then you get into all sorts of other things like the green PO1s and the Omega PO1s with the different trigger mechanism. It gets kind of a mess, but what I would say is if you're going to get a Compact, find the one you want and make sure you use the SKU number to verify whatever you're getting. Now, things I wish I knew about CZs before I got into them. First one, if you're going to upgrade them for matches, you like to tinker with stuff, I would not recommend getting a decocker model. As you can see, I did not follow my own advice. I didn't know. The decocker model has more mechanical complexity when you're working on it, and it has a worse trigger out of the box. It's still fine. I mean, it's fine stock trigger, but it's definitely worse than a safety model out of the box. But you can decock it safely, as opposed to a Shadow, where if I want to decock this gun, I do that. Okay, on a decocker, you just decock it. Okay, so if you're not going to do any kind of tuning to them and you want it for self-defense, that totally makes sense. But if you're going to work on them, honestly, if you're going to work on them, just get a Shadow or an SP01 with a safety. Okay, the decocker makes a big difference. If you're new to CZs and you're coming from something like Glocks, I just use that as my most common comparison because they're practically everywhere. These are double single action guns that are hammer fired. Okay, so unlike a Glock striker trigger, it's not the same thing every time. The first pull when the hammer's down in double action on these guns will be a little bit heavier than the single action pulls that follow, which are a lot lighter. What does that mean? You need to practice that. You need to practice the transition from double to single action. That can kind of confuse new shooters. It's definitely not as simple as a Glock, but the single action on these CZs can be made light as hell, giving you a competitive advantage. Absolutely. And once you get used to it, I mean, for me, I absolutely prefer this. These guns are little machines in competitions. They're total tanks. Aftermarket support. There's not as much CZ aftermarket support as like a Glock, okay? You're not going to find holsters and mags for really cheap, falling out of trees. They're not everywhere. You're going to have to order stuff online. A lot of times you got to get it from specialty shops like Cajun Gunworks, CZ Custom, things like that. And the other one is getting them, okay? So you're not going to walk into a gun store and say, hey, do you have a PCR? Good luck. If you find one, you better go buy a lottery ticket because you are a lucky dude. Or lady, right? Maybe you're a gun-toting woman. You're going to have to buy these guns online, period. You can look at a gun show. They'll be scattered about. But if you find exactly what you want in the CZ and it's online, buy it online, have it shipped to your FFL, do the transfer. If you've never done that before, it's really not that big of a deal. You're just paying for it online and then sending it to a store for the background check. Super easy. I would do that. Especially because these guns are imported in batches. So if you know you want a PCR, for example, this is really hard to get, and you see that they're in stock, you got to buy them because they're going to be sold. And then you have to wait till the next boat of them comes over that Drunk Ivan packed for you over the Czech Republic. Once the boat of them comes over, then you got to buy it up really quick. I mean, there can be months of CZ droughts. This happens all the time. So if you find one and you want it and you think, oh, I'm going to think about it and come back, you're not. You're not buying it. It's going to be gone. So I would know that. As far as my experience with them, these things are freaking tanks. I put all sorts of ammo. Doesn't matter. I've shot steel cases through them. They just eat and they run well, especially in competitions like USPSA. You'll see a lot of Shadows. You'll see a lot of SP01s. There's a reason for that. I mean, these things are beasts. So love the CZ75. If you have questions about these, find a forum with people who know what they're talking about when it comes to CZs. Don't ask the guy at your gun store because he's just going to say, get a Glock, because he probably doesn't even know what this is. Join CZ Firearm Owners Group on Facebook and ask questions. It's a massive group of a bunch of people, including some really well-known people in the CZ community, competition shooters, CZ custom guys, Cajun Gunworks, things like that. People will help you figure out what the hell you're doing. It's better to ask some questions than buy the wrong gun because that would suck. But yeah, I hope that helps, guys, and best of luck to you enjoying your CZs. If you want to know what I've done to any of these, just ask in the comments, and I will tell you. So, cool. Have a good one.